and welcome to Pod Street, the podcast for Writing WA, where we interview creatives, creative thinkers, and insightful human beings in this wonderful world of ours. My name is Ma Thida. I'm the Partnership and Development Manager for Writing WA. And today we're very lucky to have our special guest, Ma Thida. Ma Thida is an award-winning dissident writer and human rights activist from Myanmar. She spent 6 years in prison in the 1990s, which she wrote about in her acclaimed memoir, Prisoner of Conscience, My Steps Through Insein. In the book, she details her use of vipassana meditation to get her through the untold hardships of jail. Ma Thida has published more than a dozen books, as well as short stories, and has worked as an editor and a surgeon. She was awarded the Pen Barbara Goldsmith Freedom to Write Award and the Reebok Human Rights Award, and is currently the chair of Pen International Writers in Prison Committee. Thida, welcome to Pod Street.
Thank you so much.
So your book, Prisoner of Conscience, tracks an incredibly pivotal time in global history in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Do you think that Myanmar's journey had been meaningfully acknowledged prior to your book being published in the world? And if not, what were the unique hurdles that Myanmar faced in gaining greater global awareness prior to your book being published?
Well, because of the very heavy censorship since 1962, the global awareness and global knowledge is very much limited in my country. So I was so lucky. I wrote this book, my prison memoir, at Harvard University. But the good thing is, while I was in prison, I could manage to have a couple of the periodicals about the global affairs. You know, I could smuggle in these kind of the Burmese periodicals. So that's really helped me a lot to understand what's going on outside the war. So for that reason, I try to include these data about what's going on outside the war while I was in prison. So that's the, yeah.
And I think you mentioned something quite powerful about your grandfather, that it was not resistance, but not obedience. And I was interested in the journey from your grandfather to your parents to yourself, what you took on and what you chose not to take on from that familial journey.
Yeah, that's really my grandfather. He's indeed very pretty much inclined to do resistance, but with this situation surrounding him, he decided to do this approach in between, no obedience, neither obedience nor the resistance, something like that. But it's also helping me to have a lateral thinking, not the mainstream thinking, very critical thinking. And both of my parents, they are also very helpful, especially my father. You know, in our society, it's more like the patriarchal, and we need to obey everything, whatever the parents said, something like that. But my father gave me so much freedom and so much knowledge about the country and the war, you know. And my mother also never tried to interrupt nor interfere with my father's decision. And both of them, they were very much like traveling inside the country. So that also helps me a lot to understand what's going on in other part of the country, even though I was raised in the capital city, Rangoon. So a lot of the minority living area are having very different kind of poverty. And then both of my parents are also not the Pama majority. They are half Chinese, half Shan, half Chinese, half Mon, something like that. So for that reason, I was so lucky to understand the complexity of the country, to witness the poverty of the people, and to put myself to empathy the people with different experiences. You know, sometimes people can only empathy with the similar experience. But for me, I was so lucky because I was exposed through my personal experience. And at the same time, because of my heavy reading, I exposed to the people who I cannot access to them. But I can still keep the empathy for those who have different experience than me.
That's a great insight. Absolutely. And in the second chapter of Prisoner of Conscience, you write about your journey becoming a writer. And you write that at an early point, your gentleness, and forgive me if I get this wrong, is it mudu?
Yes, mudu.
Mudu, was decreasing, and you didn't realize it at the time, but you realize it now. So I guess as someone working in the literary industry too, what do you think contributed to that mudu decreasing? What was the kind of attitudes that were prevalent in the time when you were coming up as a writer that were challenging?
Well, this is really important to me because a lot of people in my country, they have been trained as to be polite, very, very polite. That means not necessarily with this mudu. When I mention mudu, it's more with my modest attitude, not with my physical or verbal behavior.
Yes.
The real essence of the mudu is just how to make your mind tender and empathy to the others. So that's why I think this is very, very helpful. And I really believe when we show our politeness, our, mannered, very politely or culturally positive, without this kind of the mental modestness or the acceptance, it cannot be completed. So that's really making me still impacting, not just in the present, but also, even though I was known as, or I'm still known as a dissident, my resistance movement is going on. Of course, I resist this. Not against the person, but against the behavior and attitude.
And it must be one of the things that struck me reading your book is I'm guessing you felt fear at various points, but I also noticed your centeredness in what you felt was right and what was wrong and what was okay and what was not okay. You talk about vipassana a bit once you're inside the prison. You were also aware of that prior to that point, and is that what grounded you in spaces like, for example, the interrogations when you were first arrested?
That's so true, because I was pretty much exposed already, being to the how to practice and how to prepare my mind and to face the hardship, something like that. But I never ever have that much physical and visceral experience with the intimidation and the threats, But that was really good because I've already been prepared with my meditation practice. And that's why I at the end of my imprisonment term, I say thank you for being in prison for that reason. Yeah.
So talk me through that. So in the sense, let's say there's a feeling of fear that comes on over yourself. Do you label that fear and go, this is fear, and not identify with it personally? Is that correct? It's sort of a detachment to observe?
Oh, sure. I need to identify this as fear. I need to identify all the feeling as it is. That's very helpful. Sometimes the avoidance or the denial of the states of mind, that the current states of mind will not be very helpful for overcoming it. The way we practice vipassana meditation is more on the acceptance, First accept it and then try to digest it, We never try to avoid nor deny. So, of course, I did have fear, but I need to analyze it. I need to dissect it, and then I need to overcome it.
Excellent. And so I guess before that point, you write really powerfully about the horrific realities of the Red Bridge uprising. And were you aware at that time that it was becoming increasingly dangerous to overtly resist? And were you aware of the need to adapt as to how one would resist and what techniques one might use?
That's true. But partly I was a little bit crazy about to write my own prison memoir.
Yeah.
So I know this is the potential. Yeah, I have fear, of course, but at the same time, I was a little bit happy. Now I can get the chance to write my own prison memoir, something like that. Yeah.
And obviously, after Prisoner of Conscience, we now sort of, there's something quite poignant in the epilogue where you say to those reading this book, please keep an eye on Myanmar in this time, 2015, 2021. And then, of course, in 2021, things do go south again. So one of the things I noticed in that transition is there's something that patriarchal or a dominant culture does wherein the perception is perhaps the most important thing they're worried about rather than the reality. Would you say that's fair, that in fact there was a sense of confusion that was sort of in what was actually occurring? So those who felt they were fighting for democracy felt like they were getting somewhere, but in fact the government had a bunch of systems set up to confuse that and lead them in the wrong direction. Talk me through your understanding of that, because you probably know that better than anyone I've come across.
Thank you. I wrote another book. It's called The Roadmap. So in that book, The Roadmap, I wrote that book in English, and that book is all about Myanmar political transitions from the 1988 until 2010. So I make 7 chapters for that book, and the earlier military regime keeps saying, here are the 7 steps roadmap to democracy. So I peculiarly choose the 7 chapters for my book, and from the starting point, end road, and roadblock, detour, something like that. So the last chapter is called Fork in the Road. So I felt what we faced in around about 2010, just before the general election under the 2008 very undemocratic constitution, we were at the fork in the road. There will be so many ways we can reach out to our final destination, but as it is no more at the junction, it's already being at the fork in the road. We need to choose. We need to choose which way we need to go. But the problem is, after the 2021 coup, a lot of people started saying, "Oh, Myanmar is make a U-turn." So yeah, from that's why I started thinking, okay, if we say U-turn, what does it mean? It means we were from point A to point B, point C, and then we went back to point A. It's a U-turn. But my argument is, I never ever thought we were in point B or point C. In these past decades, the whole quasi-civilian, quasi-military administrations under this 2008 constitution didn't give us reaching out to any point. We were just in a maze at the point A. So we were really pretty much entrapped in this very black magic maze. It sounded like it was no exit. So even though we have been marched miles after miles, we have been trying our best to finding out the way out to get back to the road to democracy, it was not successful. So it sounded like we did a lot of effort, and a lot of people thought, oh, we did have a kind of the some glimpse of the freedom and the chances, but we were at the corner of this maze, not on the road, something like that. So that's why I wrote this new book, Amazed.
And so what would need to change to head towards true democracy in your country? And is it feasible? Is it possible? And what sort of timeframes are we talking about?
The good thing is, during this past case, with the very new and pretty much a glimpse of the civil liberties, and with the technological advancement, I think people started learning about their rights. People started learning about the democracy and human rights. And with a little bit of freedom, they now understand what's their role for making the big change. So the good things about 2021 Spring Revolution, the whole population, civilian populations, is now started saying, without our consent, nobody can govern us. This is a very big achievement for our country. In the past, people just waiting someone to lead them, so waiting, some organization or institutions to save them, something like that. But now in 2021, they already been ready to believe in themselves and to believe in their activities, to believe in their activism. Yeah.
Excellent. And I guess getting back to your own journey, in Prison of Conscience, you do discuss the concept of karma. And I was interested if that was a concrete concept that's remained the same for you as you've grown older, or if it's evolved. And I was particularly interested, you talked about karmic debts from past lives in addition to the current life. And I was really interested in unpacking, I guess, that conceptually. And this is the situation you're talking about in your book, is being in prison, and in some would argue wrongfully in prison. So in that case, how do you process that kind of information? And given you're talking about past life debt, what does one do? Does one sit in a state of meditation, or is this a conscious thought process?
Well, I think, for me, the information matters, but information and data cannot easily be changed into knowledge without the personal experience. So for me, the prison experience and the experience under the dictatorship, it's very helpful. At the same time, the reading, the reading of the other people's experience, the reading books is, reading of the other people's experience. That's also helping me to build the knowledge. I just cannot rely on the data or information I got through the journalisms or the news media, but I can apply some of my own personal experience and the experience through books, making my own knowledge and very strong understanding through these personal experience plus information, making me more knowledgeable about how much I can handle. And I always believe the freedom is not by chance, but by choice. So with my own, this build-up experience, I started using my vipassana meditation practice, the consciousness, mindfulness to analyze and to dissect all these knowledge, and then that make me wisdom, I think, the ultimate aim for getting the information is not just end at the point of knowledge. It should be end at the point of wisdom, so that's also very helpful. And I think the current challenge for the whole world, not just me, not just for the Myanmar, with the digital technology, the explosion of the information is making people confused if they are not yet handling with their own knowledge or the wisdom.
I think to step away is very difficult, and also to feel it's natural to feel both involvement and powerless in situations that are occurring around the world because we're getting all that information, and also to sort of the mind can prioritize, but it's very difficult if one can't sit in a calm enough space. Do you find that the voice inside of you is kinder or wiser at this time in your life? Is that something you developed too?
Yes. I think, with the help of the vipassana meditation, I pretty much get more open to the world, and the world itself is growing in very uncivilized way. So that's also making me more effort and consciousness about my own analysis, my own approach, my own awareness. So I feel, with age and with this meditation practice, I feel I'm a bit wiser.
Yeah. And so you're going to be doing 2 talks while you're in Perth in June, in a couple of weeks' time, one at Murdoch University, one at the Centre for Stories. What are the key messages you hope to impart to Australia's a very privileged country, and I'm not even sure if half of Australia realises that. What are the key messages you hope to impart to people coming to those sessions?
In this case, right now, is not just about my personal experience, not just about my personal stories. I think the urgent need is for my country, which it has been pretty much ignored, and we are facing the pretty much heavy, silent emergency. So a lot of people are facing very much hardship, and international communities assistance and support is much needed in that sense. Without the understanding about the reality on the ground, the context of the country situation, you cannot be very helpful. For that reason, I really want to give the message about what's reality on the ground, especially about my country.
One of the things that strikes me talking with you, and I'm very lucky to have this conversation with you, is that for someone who has spent time in prison, that seems one of the most important things on one hand, but also one of the least interesting things about you and the journey you have taken. So I think that it's interesting what you say about one's thoughts and one's choices, and to think that you could be in a position like you were, but find yourself so centered is deeply inspiring to me. And I'm also really moved by your commitment to change and bypassing fear of what that might mean to yourself and to the people you care about. So I found both your books incredibly inspiring. I think Perth's really lucky to have you come and share your insights and wisdom. And once again, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Thida. It's great to meet you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.